we can get massive ROI out of our digital commerce investments in B2B without the customer having to change their behavior at all. And we can service that digitally, and we can intercept that digitally. Wow, this is a game changer when we were meeting a client for the first time or whatever. Just listen. Listen for the people who ask the best questions at the table. Those are the ones you need to pay attention to. Those are the ones that are going to run these businesses.
Jason, I can't believe that. Like, we've had group podcasts together. You have your own podcast, and yet this is the first time I'm having you on solo. In fact, I was looking through my list a couple weeks ago, and I was like, why have we not had Jason Greenwood on solo on this? So really appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure, man. I'm chuffed to be here, as they say in New Zealand and the UK. I'm chuffed to be here.
You're chuffed, one of the happy. Chuffed sounds like it's kind of mad.
No, chuffed is happy. Chuffed is over the moon. Chuffed is stoked.
All right,
and I'm chuffed to be here.
Use that on my kids. I'm pretty chuffed.
Well, look, the funny thing is that you're a legend in the industry, and I count it a privilege to be part of the B2BA as a member and someone who tries to contribute every way that I can to our industry. But, you really have set the bar pretty damn high as someone who is well-known, well-respected, gives back, tries to help people, grow in their career and be more successful and have more impact and have more fulfillment. And, I think you're kind of the archetypal person that I look up to in this industry as somebody that if I can look back in another decade or so and have had a positive impact anywhere near the kind of level I think you've had on our industry, then I'll be pretty proud of that legacy.
Well, I appreciate it. And the reason I wanted to have you on is because I feel the same way. I think I remember, so I kind of didn't leave, but I, for all intents and purposes, left for a couple of years and did real work, I guess, for a little while. I got tired of doing the real work, by the way. And so I came back to this. No. And when I came back, I was looking through, okay, who's doing what out there, and your name, floated to the top of the list. And I started looking at what you were doing, watching your podcast, and really just have a lot of respect for you. And then it was a little bit after that we got to meet at a mixer, a vendor mixer. That was a really nice time, and we've gotten along ever since. So I'm happy to have you on. Let's do some origin story. How did you get into this world of B2B e-commerce?
It's super interesting because the first half of my career was really heavily focused on B2C and D2C retail e-commerce. Was sort of the first half of my career.
Did you start that? Did you start in e-com?
Yes. I started in e-com. I started my career in e-com. So I actually started at an agency 25 years ago, started in an e-commerce agency, development agency, and that was 100% focused on retail e-commerce. Then in tandem with that, not long after I started at that agency, and the way that I even found out about that agency was through I had a friend of a friend ran that agency and owned that agency in Christchurch, New Zealand, and he had married a Kiwi woman. I was living in Christchurch at the time. He's an American. A mutual friend introduced us. He's like, hey, I'm doing this e-commerce thing. It's going really well. We need somebody like you to come in and help us sell and help us grow and help us do digital marketing and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, I don't work in that industry, but because I come from originally hospitality prior to working in digital. But I said, I kind of understand it. I do a lot of stuff online already. I feel like I'm pretty cutting edge when it comes to technology. Whatever I don't know, I'll figure out along the way. And which is exactly what I did. And then about 6 months after starting there, a friend of mine and I decided to start our own e-commerce business as a side hustle. And within 6 months of starting that business, it grew so fast that one of us needed to quit our job and run it full time. So I quit first because my business partner was making about 3 times the salary I was making at that point. Then 6 months later, it doubled in business again, and it needed both of us in the business full time. We were both running this from our bedrooms at home. And then, so he quit, and we were running the business full time. Then it sort of doubled again in like another 6 months. And so we needed to get like an office and a small warehouse space and all this sort of stuff, because all of our inventory was being held at my friend's garage at home. Boxes.
What kind of products were you selling?
We were directly importing and wholesaling and retailing memory cards for cell phones. Well, originally it was just for digital cameras. And we were importing and selling memory cards, like genuine name brand memory cards of the Toshiba and SanDisk and everything else. We were retailing them online for cheaper than what the distributors were selling them for in New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
And so we ran that for 7 years. We exited the business. I sold the business off, and then I was just debating what to do next. Do I want to start another e-commerce business? Do I want to do something else? And I went back into e-commerce through an agency. I went to work at an agency, and I was account managing and doing digital marketing through them.
You were still in New Zealand at this time?
I was still in New Zealand, yeah.
Okay.
And that's when I really first started getting exposed to a mix of B2C and B2B projects. So it was still heavily weighted, 75% retail e-commerce, but then there was the most exciting, most complex, most gnarly, from a technical and operational perspective, projects we got our teeth into were always the B2B projects. They always had the most back office complexity. They had the most channel mix complexity. They had the most sales process complexity. And I loved that, because I had always been more interested in the technical and operational side of e-commerce than I was the digital marketing side of e-commerce. Now, I obviously knew where digital marketing, tech, operations, data, like I knew where those intersected, because I had run my own business, but certainly I wouldn't have considered myself a digital marketing expert at that point. And so I always gravitated towards the B2B projects as the ones that were the most interesting to me. And even at that point, even that early on in the B2C world, the design patterns of B2C were becoming pretty, the word I would use is calcified, meaning that there was these standard stacks that were emerging. And regardless, when you were a startup, maybe you'd start up with Magento, you'd have this marketing automation platform, this accounting platform, maybe you'd have QuickBooks or Xero in the back end. Then when you got a little bit bigger, maybe you'd graduate off QuickBooks to NetSuite. Then when you got a little bit bigger, like there was these well-trodden paths where FOMO led everything that retail e-commerce did. And it started to get a little repetitive and a little bit boring. And it was difficult for me to flex my technical muscle as a solution architect and a technical architect. It was difficult for me to flex my muscles in that environment, because everything was so cookie cutter in many respects. But the B2B projects were always not like that. There was nothing cookie cutter about them, because all those businesses were so unique, and they ran so many different back office systems, and they run so many different sales processes, and the complexity of the catalog was so wild that those ones really made me think. And those ones were really hard to do discovery on. And so I always had a bent towards B2B, but I just didn't get a chance to be exposed to that many B2B projects. Then after I left that agency, I took up a role as basically the director of e-com for New Zealand's largest retailer of natural health products. And they were a bit of a hybrid company. They were a manufacturer and a retailer. So they distributed, they retail products from hundreds of brands, but then they also had an entire product range that was their own, that they designed and manufactured these supplement products. And so they had a wholesale side to the business, and they had the retail, the e-commerce side to the business. And so I was like 90% of my time was tasked with helping with the retail e-commerce side of the business, and we replatformed and re-architected everything over the few years that I was there. New ERP, first time implementing a CRM, first time implementing a PIM system, first time doing omni-channel system integration between our retail store and online experience, and all that stuff. We replatformed our WMS and our OMS and just the whole kit and caboodle, and replatformed e-com as well while I was there. And I managed all those projects. And it was really, really exciting. And then like the 10%, I was consulting to the wholesale side of the business, and that was really exciting. And so that's when I really started to intrinsically understand complexity of supply chain, internal logistics, third-party logistics. And it was the first time I had architected and run search and select for clients with ERP, but I had never been through an end-to-end ERP implementation myself. And so it was awesome to actually be from the architecture stage to the implementation stage to the get live stage to the oh my god what have we done stage to the get everything stable and operating well stage. Like to and I stayed there longer than I had planned to stay there, specifically because I wanted to get through all of this change management as a merchant, as a supplier, as a seller. I wanted to go through the full project lifecycle of every single commerce and operational system in the business. I wanted to actually have firsthand experience of that because it gave me a new sense of empathy for the complexity of change management at that scale. And then I went and I bought into, after I left there, after we were finally live with this massive change of every single piece of technology in our business. Then I bought into a friend of mine had started an e-commerce agency a few years before, primarily focused on development, e-commerce development, and I actually bought into his agency, and then I was there for a year and a half running. I was head of solutions for them, and again the mix there was probably 60-40, 60% retail e-commerce, 40% B2B e-commerce. But yet again, the B2B projects were the ones I gravitated to because they were the most fun and most challenging. And then I decided to go out on my own, and I decided to become an independent because I wanted location freedom, I wanted financial freedom, I just wanted general freedom after the balls up of COVID in New Zealand, and the level of lockdown that we had for 3 years was just insane. And so I was like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of New Zealand. My wife and I are big world travelers. We don't have kids, and we love to travel. And we were just like, we just got to get out of here. We got to get back into the heart of the action in North America. Plus, we want to travel the world. And so that's when we decided to make the move to Mexico, so that we could be in close proximity to the U.S. And we spent all of 2023 traveling around the country, deciding where to live. And we
did van life, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, well, we were living in an off-grid tiny house for the 2.5 years right before we left New Zealand, and that was pretty cool.
Wow.
And then when we moved to Mexico, we had a Toyota RAV4 that I bought in Mexico City, and we traveled all around Mexico with our dog that we brought with us from New Zealand. And we were staying in a range between all the way from tiny little lodges to Airbnbs to hotels to apartments to everything over a year. We did 20,000 kilometers driving around Mexico in 2023 before we decided where we wanted to settle. And we've been in Puebla ever since then.
What people, different twist on this than normal. I think as I talk to people, there's just so many people curious about what it's like to be an entrepreneur. They're curious, and then they also are they have beliefs about it that aren't true. They're a little dreamy about being an entrepreneur. I often can break that dreamy.
You could make sure it doesn't turn into a nightmare.
In about 3 seconds, I can tell them, wow, what's it like for you being an entrepreneur? You've kind of done it all. You started, and then you moved to being an entrepreneur early. You've gone back work as a practitioner at agencies, SIs, back to yourself. Like, for you, what's it like being an entrepreneur? Why do you choose to be an entrepreneur versus anything else?
I've chosen to optimize my life for freedom and equal parts freedom and personal responsibility. I've always been wired that way. And I think it's partly my American roots. It's partly the fact that I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad owned his own company from the time I was born till the time I, moved out of home. So I was exposed to entrepreneurship very young, the ups, the downs, the sideways, the challenges. It was feast or famine in my dad's business when we'd win a massive contract. My dad was, I'm old enough that my dad, his first company was a typewriter sales and service company.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
then
so cool.
And then when the business computer started to take over, he opened a computer store, but specifically focused on business computing, not retail computers like the TRS-80 or the Commodore 64, but like the hardcore Eagle computers, and then latterly the PC clones that were being used in businesses. And so he was going in and he was setting up networks, and he was going and setting up, like in the very, very early days when computers replaced typewriters in things like title companies and insurance companies and things like that. He was going in and helping them make the transition from typewriters to computers. And so I was exposed to not only entrepreneurship, but technical stuff from a pretty young age. And I was taught to not be afraid of that stuff, to just jump in and figure it out. And my dad was self-taught. My dad never went to university or got a degree, but he was completely self-taught. And I never went to university and got a degree. And I'm 100% self-taught. And I'm a autodidactic learner. So I just like to get in and do things and figure it out as I go along. And I back myself to figure anything I don't know. I back myself to kind of figure it out as we go along. And that's been the entirety of my career. But if I had to boil entrepreneurship down to one thing, it is that freedom element to it, combined with the personal responsibility element to it, that really has always sucked me in. And I'll never, never say never, I suppose, but I can't see myself ever working for anybody ever again. Now that I've built a sufficient personal brand, and I've been working on my personal brand for over a decade, like pretty hard out, making content at scale for over a decade, and now that I've worked so hard to develop, hopefully a positive reputation, some credibility, some really great outcomes. The way that I actually finally decided to go independent again is one of the clients that I was working with as part of the last agency that I had bought into. They said, "Look, we really like working with this agency, but mostly we just like working with you." They said, "Could we please hire you independent of the agency, and could you just come in and do a couple projects with us?" And I said, "Look, I think that's the only reason you know about me is because of the agency. That's the only way you met me." And so I said, "Look, I'll go and talk to Tony," which is my friend who was the founder of the agency. I said, "Look, they've asked me if they can work with me independent of the agency." And he said, "Well, look, finish the paid project that you're in the middle of with them right now that they engaged with us for, and then you can do whatever you outside of work time." I don't know what I thought I was going to do, given the fact that I was doing like 60-hour weeks at the agency. It's not like I had much spare time. And that was another thing is I learned the most. If I look back over my career, I learned the most in the shortest amount of time in agency land. But it is a hard friggin' life. It is long hours. It's stressful projects. It's
competitive.
It's competitive. Agency land is real hard, and it's hard on the body. You're expected to drink with the clients. You're expected to go out to dinners with them. It's fun and it's awesome and it's fast paced, and you get exposed to many different clients and tech stacks and business models and channels, and like the rate at which you learn. Like when I moved back into industry, after having been in agency land, it was like, wow, this is so slow. This is so slow paced in comparison.
Right.
And I'm going deep inside this one company as opposed to having like 20 accounts on the go at the same time. But I think I don't want to say it's a total young man's game, but I don't think most people can do agency life forever. It's like 2 to 5 years at a time. You can do agency life, and then you got to recover. You got to go do something else and recover from that, because it's hard work. And so I looked at that as an opportunity to exit that level of intensity when that client said, and I used that as an off ramp out of agency life. And I said, "Look, I'm going to go and I'm going to give this a go. They've offered me an exit. They're my first foundational client as an independent, and I'm going to ride that, and I'm going to save up a cash buffer, planning to have no additional income for 6 months." And I saved up stacked cash, and then I told my wife, because I remember, so funny, when I first started back up at that agency again, the last agency that I was in, I remember coming for like a week in a row. I came home and I wasn't home till like 8 or 9 p.m. And I remember walking through the door like on the Friday, and it was like 8 or 9, and the dinner she had made was cold. And she said, "Look, I love you, but is this how this is going to be forever? Because this is real, real tough. And
tough way to make a living.
I don't see you much, and that sucks." And I was like, "Yeah, no, this can't go on this way forever." And so that was my off ramp out, and it's the growth businesses. Luckily, I had more clients that came in once I sort of announced to the world that I was going independent, and I didn't burn up my 6 months worth of runway, and we were kind of off to the races. And I wouldn't say it's been straight up since then, but it's been the blessings have been immense. The freedom has
Mm.
been immense. The fulfillment and the joy that I get out of getting up every day and doing what I do is immense. And I can't really imagine doing anything else, to be honest. I think I'll do this, you know, uh, eventually I think my content will hopefully get to a place where it constitutes the bulk of my income. It doesn't today. I have to,
Mm.
my bread and butter is consulting, but I will probably always at any given point in time have one or two consulting clients on the go. And the reason for that is because I think you really rapidly get out of touch with your industry if you're not in it, like at least to some degree. If you're not keeping your finger on the actual pulse of what's really happening in your industry, I think you get out of touch real quick. And I've often said if I took a 6-month holiday from my industry, I'd have to like probably take a month after I came back to re-engross myself in, okay, where's everything at? Where's everything at with AI? Where's everything, like, where are we at? Because our industry moves so damn fast, you rapidly lose touch with where things are at, I think.
What's been the biggest surprise of being an entrepreneur? I like this topic because I think there's just so many people out there that, you know, there might be a VP of ecom somewhere and they're thinking 5 years down the road and like, what do I do? And like, am I going to take the same job somewhere else and rebuild? Like, or do I do something different? And often they think about consulting or working with startups and all, you know, all these types of things. So I love this topic just because I think it's really interesting to talk about what it's like to be. What's been your biggest surprise being an entrepreneur? What would you think? What was a thing that you thought that wasn't true?
How hard you have to work to keep your pipeline full. I think that's the,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, and I've seen numerous peers of mine, both Australia, New Zealand, as well as North American peers who have tried to go independent, but they didn't necessarily have a big personal brand. They didn't necessarily have people chomping at the bit to work with them as an independent. They weren't used to making content at scale. They weren't used to having to do selling. They weren't used to necessarily have to do cold calling or cold DMing. They just don't, like, if they've only ever come from the industry side where the work kind of comes to them, they don't really know what it takes to build a portfolio of business that's sustainable for them. And so
Yeah.
that's why we see so many people go independent. And then, like, I'll look at their LinkedIn, and like 12 months later, they've quietly gone back into industry, and I see they've changed, their job title, and they've killed off their independent consultancy, and they're back working industry side again because they just found it's so hard to both deliver work and make sure that you are being visible enough in your community to remain top of mind when someone needs the type of service that you provide. And so for me, like, I don't do cold anything. I never have. So I don't cold DM, I don't cold email, I don't cold call. And I knew that because I didn't want to do that, that I needed to have, and I started building a personal brand when I was an employee. So I started building my personal brand when I remember the day that I started at Health Post, my first day, I'm pretty sure it was the first day I was there, I released my first YouTube video. And I started my solo
Hmm.
podcast and everything else. And the reason I did that was because Gary Vee, and I was a pretty heavy listener of Gary Vee at that point.
Ditto.
I remember him saying, "Oh, you think you're a thought leader? You think you know some stuff? You don't get to decide that. The market gets to decide that. So you put content out around that stuff that you think you're a thought leader in. The market will decide whether you're a thought leader or not. You can't call yourself a thought leader. Only the market can call you a thought leader."
Mm-hmm.
And he kept repeating that over and over and over again. And he said, you won't know all the good things that will happen in your life as a result of producing content. You have to trust the process. He said it might be a new job. It might be that you get to run your own business. It might be that you get to speak at events. It might be that you meet your life's partner. It might mean that that you get to travel the world. It could mean 100 different things, but you won't know until you do it. So you just have to trust the process and do it on faith. Like, lots of things in life require faith, right? Going out on my own required an element of faith that I could make this work, right?
Yeah.
But putting content out there at scale, I've just released my 610th
Wow.
podcast episode. I release 3
It's
podcast
tremendous.
episodes a week, right? Now, there's times when I don't feel like recording a damn podcast. There's times I don't feel like doing as much talking in a day. Like, I told you before we went live that I just went downstairs before our call and threw some food down my gullet because I've been on calls since 9 a.m. this morning, nonstop. And, part of it's from my content and part of it's client work and client calls and everything else. And so, I still spend 8 to 10 hours a week, every week, consistently on content. But that's the price to pay for the freedom I enjoy. And so I'm willing to pay that price. And so many good things have come out of this. My friendship with you, my friendship with Brett, my friendship with so many people in the industry that I love catching up with at events and speaking gigs and webinars and hanging out with. And I get to, Graham, who I met through the B2B AA from Wasserman, and I've had him on the pod. He lives in Miami. He had me and my wife stay with him in Miami, and he played the tour guide for 3 days with us there. There have been so many rich relationships that have come into my life, and some of my best friends in the whole world I met through this industry. Mm-hmm. And so there are so many good things that have come out of this that I couldn't have predicted like 10, 11 years ago when I started doing content like all the time. Like Gary was right. I couldn't have predicted all the good things, but I just had to do it on faith, and the faith has borne fruit.
I think people, when anybody else asks me about being an entrepreneur or starting your own company, that's the one thing I always tell them is pipeline. Like most people that want to do it are good at what they do, right? So they think if they're good at what they do, they can transfer that, and they might be able to easily transfer that to working with customers and be very good at that. But that's not the job. The job is actually selling it. And there's an old adage of revenue solves all problems, but it's true. Revenue solves all problems. Like you can most time figure out how to get the work done if you've sold the work. And the biggest mistake people make is they think they can be an engineer, or they think they can be a, whatever subject matter expert they want to be, and just be that, right? The reality is it's still 75%. It's 75% selling, 25% doing. And pipeline, as you said, it was is a really big one. You talked about personal brand. So you did your first YouTube video in 15?
Yeah, about that 2014, I think it was. Yeah.
Wow. And how has that evolved from where you started to what it is today?
I started. I also doubled down. So I was a member of LinkedIn before that, but I really didn't post much to LinkedIn. But at that same time, I started posting to LinkedIn almost every day, 7 days a week, and I did that for almost 7 years straight. And so I've slacked off a little bit now, and I devote a little bit more time to other channels other than LinkedIn. I still post 3 to 5 times a week to LinkedIn. But I also now do a lot more on Reddit. I do a lot more on X. I do a lot more on other channels because of the noise on LinkedIn has increased dramatically and markedly over the last couple of years. So it's harder to get cut through on LinkedIn. But in those early days, the amount of traction you could get on LinkedIn in a very short period of time was pretty wild. And, I was getting, pretty easily 10,000, 15,000 impressions per post in those early days, like easily without much effort. And, I was just trying to exercise my muscle. I was trying to get comfortable with hearing my own voice. I was trying to get comfortable with what are my 2, 3, 4 pillars that I want to regularly speak to. I was trying to get used to what's my writing style. I was trying to get used to how can I write something that's engaging, entertaining, not salesy, and I never sell like occasionally, one every 20 or 30 posts, I'll say at the bottom, if you're struggling with any of this stuff, or if you need help with any of this, you know where to find me. Like that's as close to selling as I ever get in my content. So I never ever sell through my content. Like it's just I have an almost passionate distrust of people who sell through their content.
Yeah, agreed.
And so I never wanted to be that guy. I never wanted to be that guy that they're going, oh fuck, here Jason is again pitching himself. I never wanted to be that guy, and I always wanted to just like. I knew that from very early on that about 50% of because remember, I started doing content when I was an employee, and I was like, man, I need to create an audience long before I need to monetize that audience. I need to have some respect. I need to have some name recognition, some brand recognition. Like I couldn't, and I knew right then, I was like, far out. If I quit this job today and I went out as an independent, I'd be screwed because no one knows my name. Apart from the agencies that I've worked inside of before, nobody knows what I do. Nobody knows what I stand for. Nobody knows how I can help them. Like, it's just bad. And I was like, this is not going to lead to a place of freedom unless I can get well known enough for something that is monetizable as a service. And then I knew also that even once I went independent, that there was no way that 100% of my pipeline could just come through content. So I knew that I needed to have SI relationships and partnerships. I knew I needed technical platform relationships and partnerships for referrals, both bi-directionally. They could refer business to me. I could refer business to them. Like, I knew I needed to improve my networking in the industry so that we could help each other. We could help support each other. And so I started going to more conferences. I started reaching out to people for virtual coffees. I just started putting my hand up everywhere I could, reaching out. Like, if I saw somebody putting on LinkedIn, oh, hey, we're going to have this meetup in 2 weeks time, and we're going to be talking about commerce, I would immediately message them and I'd say, hey, can I speak at, can I help you? Can I help you organize the event? Can I help you get people to the event? Can I speak at your event? Can I do a keynote? Can I help with a panel? And I would just put my hand up, and I would try to put my hand up as often as I could. And in fact, that's the way that I came to be associated with the B2B Commerce World events, even though I knew you guys, and even though I knew of the B2B EA, and even though I knew of Brett, of course, because of our relationship down in Australia and New Zealand, the moment that I heard when he put, I think it was a LinkedIn post, is when I first heard about Brett trying to organize physical B2B e-commerce world events. And I remember I jumped straight onto Slack immediately. And I said, do you have an MC yet? Because if you don't, I'm putting my hand up. I'd love to participate in this. I'd love to be a part of this community. And he said, well, not yet. You're it if you want the job. And so I've always been that guy that just put up his hand to help wherever I could. And sure, there's probably some indirect benefit to me, and sure, maybe it keeps my name up in lights, and sure, maybe it exposes me to potential clients, sure, but that was never my mentality. And I think intent matters as an entrepreneur.
It does. It does.
I think people can smell bullshit intent from a mile away, and if people feel like you're only reaching out to help because you think it's a quid pro quo and it's going to benefit you, as opposed to genuine, hey, I want to help grow the community that I'm a part of, because I believe a rising tide floats all boats, and we all benefit from that. We all benefit from the hive mind of knowledge. We all benefit from sharing and learning together, which is what I genuinely, in my heart, like. I look back on my career, and when I first started out, if there was not 2 or 3 key people that took the time to take me under their wing and teach me everything they knew without being paid for that, like, I wouldn't be successful in this career without those people. And they didn't expect a damn thing. They were just sharing to share, because they wanted more people in their industry to do a good job and to give our industry a good name. And I just think, damn, I got to send that letter back down again, because this industry's been so friggin' good to me, and it's given me a life that I could have only dreamed of 25 years ago when I started in this industry. I didn't know where I was going to end up. I didn't know I was going to end up as an independent consultant 25 years later. I had no idea. But I tell you, that's the other thing about entrepreneurship. I think people can smell desperation. It's like dogs, right? Dogs can smell fear. Customers can smell fear. Customers can smell desperation. Partners can smell desperation. When you come across as desperate, needy, like, it's not healthy for you, and it's not healthy for them. And so I think you have to try to, even if you have to fake it till you make it, you got to try to come from a position of strength, and you got to come across as confident. And it's like, hey, look, I want to work with you. I want us to create a rising tide that floats all boats. I want to help. I want to contribute. I want to jump in and get my hands dirty and do whatever needs to be done to help us grow together. And that's kind of how I have always approached entrepreneurship, and it seems to have worked.
Yeah, Gary Vee has one of his first books was jab, 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 right hook, right? It would give, and not give
Well,
for
not expect,
the,
but
not
ask.
give for the jab, not give for the right hook. It was like give, truly give. and then you earn the right. Then you earn the right to, ask for sales, not out of desperation, but because you've earned the right. And I've always loved that. You mentioned you said 10,000 views on LinkedIn. It just made me think about so my daughter was an intern for us this summer, and she, maybe the first post she ever made on LinkedIn, maybe she did this like video day in the life thing, very Gen Z, thing. She got 500,000 impressions.
Wow, wild.
I told her, I said, my really good ones right now, I'll get 10, 12, but that's like once every, it has to be timed right. I mean, everything has to be perfect for it to get that. Her first one, she does 500,000 impressions, which is crazy. Then she did another video not too long later, and she got another 250, 300,000 impressions. I'm like, I'm doing something wrong in this. From your podcasts, over 600 episodes, what are your have any standouts in that on the B2B side?
Look,
Graham is tremendous. You mentioned Graham. You
yeah,
have any
we
others?
actually did a series together. We actually did
Did you?
a master series, a 3-episode master series about B2B, and yeah, he was an awesome guest. Look, I have in general awesome guests, and I'm very lucky in that way. The ones that always are easier for me to help stand out are the ones where I don't feel like I've kind of had to pull teeth to get. I remember I recorded an episode. I've only ever had, I think, out of 610 episodes, I think I've only ever had 2 episodes that I didn't release. One was a technical platform where the person couldn't actually explain well enough to me, even, and I'm very technical, what their
Yeah,
platform
what they
is and what
do.
it does. And I was like, man, if I can't understand this based on our
There's no
conversation,
way people are going to
no
understand
one
it.
else is going to understand this. So I literally
Yeah.
wrote back 2 weeks later and I apologized. And I said, look, I can't. I went back and re-listened to our episode, and I said, I still don't understand what you guys do. And I said, so I can't, in good conscience, release this episode. I'm sorry. Maybe when you get it, because they hadn't been around long. They were like a 6-month-old tech company. And I was like, when you sort of nail this down a little bit more, then let me know and we'll re-record. And the second one was one where they spent the entire hour of recording pitching themselves and their services. And I was like, I kept trying to lead them down other paths, and it always kept
Mhm.
coming back to them. And I was like, this is bad. This is just going to come off as a wicked sales pitch, and I'm not up for that. And so again, I emailed them back like 2 weeks later. Look, I re-listened to this. This is not good. This is just going to come across as a sales pitch, and it's actually not going to help you at all anyway. So I can't release it. And then the third one was one that I did end up releasing, but in hindsight, I regretted releasing. Another tech platform, very well-known tech platform, not directly an e-commerce platform, but an e-commerce enablement platform. And I spent an hour trying to pull information out of this. It was the CEO, co-founder and CEO of the company who I had on the pod. And he was so secretive about how their platform worked from a technical
Mhm.
perspective. Uh, Broadly speaking, it was a marketing attribution platform, and he spent an hour dodging basically my most technical questions. And so I could never pull out of him. Honestly, he would be like, oh, we don't talk about, how our platform's different. We don't talk about what makes us unique, because that's our secret sauce and that's what makes us valuable. And I was like, then why the hell did you come on the podcast if you're not, like,
Mhm.
the whole point is to educate and entertain here. Like, but if you got nothing to share, and you're really just trying to get your name out there as a platform for people to query you and say, oh, I want to know what your secret sauce is. Show me how you work. That's going to be a bad recording. And
Mhm.
I released that, and in hindsight, I regret it. But hey, it's out there, and it is what it is, and it reflects worse on them than it does on me, to be fair. But so the best guests are the ones that come with an open mind, an open heart, and a willingness to share, even if what they share would potentially lead to losing business or businesses doing stuff on their own. Those are the ones that stand out. People that are like, damn the torpedoes. I'm going to share my best shit, And hey, look, if you want help doing this stuff, if you want to do it yourself, great. I'm going to kind of give you the blueprint and all the advice I possibly can to do this yourself. But hey, if you get stuck and you want someone to help you with this, then you can come and talk to me. That's great. But the people that are open-minded, open-hearted, and open kimonoed, those are the episodes that always crush for me and my audience.
Yeah, even for everyone listening, like if I had someone gave me this advice when being a guest on a podcast that was like, you should have a pizza with 6 slices, and no matter what question they ask you, find a way to bring it back to one of those slices. Not to avoid the question, not to be political in that way where you're not answering the question. Answer the question, but bring it back to like a point of view that you've established that's interesting to everybody to feel, which is, preparation and thinking through the things that your core beliefs or your core kind of positions on things, and have a personality. I mean, that's the other two thing, Jason. Like sometimes you're on these and you're like, this person's got zero personality. Like, that's always a tough one too. But so let's talk a little bit about B2B. I actually find the other stuff really interesting. And we'll do this in multiple parts, but what are you most excited about in 2026 when it comes to the world of B2B e-commerce, or what do you find most interesting?
Two things I'll say. One is, for the first 2 years of my independent practice, I felt like more of an evangelist than an entrepreneur, meaning that the world was still, it was, sure, we had come out of COVID, and sure, a lot of B2Bs realized, geez, okay, if another pandemic hits or something else bad happens and our field sales reps can't go and meet with people, maybe we do need to have digital routes to market. Maybe we do need to have digital comms channels. Maybe we do need to be able to meet our customers where they are digitally. But 5 years ago, which I've been in business almost exactly 5 years, in November, it's 5 years. And it was still hard. Like the conversations were hard. Like I had to, I felt like most of my content was evangelizing the value of B2B e-commerce to
Yeah.
manufacturers and distributors. Then something distinctive, and I don't know what exactly the trigger was. I think it was the tipping point of in 2024, at the end of 2024, once Forrester released their research on the buying demographic change in B2B, then I think by then the industry had realized, oh my God, the way we have been selling for the last 85 years does not work when 70% of B2B buyers are millennials and Gen Z. That doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
Or even if the transaction still takes place the way it used to, there's a whole raft of other self-serve digital services we need to be providing to those kind of people that don't want to have to ring up or email their account manager or customer service. They want to do it all themselves, and they want to do it in their own good time. And they want to do it maybe late at night after they've got home from a hard day of work and they're sitting in front of the TV on their iPad. They want to be able to, tick off a couple of things to get a head start on the next day. And I think the industry came to that realization, kind of, at least the leaders in the industry came to that realization, if not exactly at the same time, it certainly started to dawn on them simultaneously. And it was like from year 3 till now, the market has really, I wouldn't say it's 100% come to me. I still have to be out there and I still have to be evangelizing. I still have to be visible, but it's easier. The conversations are easier. I feel like I'm less convincing and I'm more showing how. How do we do it? It's not what do we need to do. It's prioritization, and then how do we execute on this opportunity, right? And that's been a massive change. And so that's the first thing. Second of all, I have never been a fan of headless commerce, composable, all that crap, because to most B2Bs, they could care less about that. They don't even know what those terms mean 99% of the time. They just want something that works. They want something that's efficient. It's not going to break the bank, and it's actually going to give them and their customers a better experience. And I saw the writing on the wall for B2B in that regard when conversational AI and multimodal AI started to mature. And I was like, hang on a second, this is really cool. This is really cool because these former communication only channels in B2B like email, WhatsApp, Slack, Teams, woo, cool. Using conversational AI and multimodal AI, now we can turn these into headless commerce channels because we can intercept a PDF of a PO sent to us via email. We can strip that out. We can map that directly into the commerce system. And so for the first time, perhaps ever, we can get massive ROI out of our digital commerce investments in B2B without the customer having to change their behavior at all. Like they don't have to log into the portal if they don't want to. They want to continue to communicate and ask questions and do a stock check, do a price check, do a a delivery date check, do a tracking of an order. They want to do a product search. They want to do all that stuff. They can do that through the communication channels that they normally would communicate with their account manager through, and we can service that digitally, right? And we can intercept that digitally. Wow, this is a game changer because historically a big part of my work was adoption planning and helping to inform the scope of a piece of work with doing customer interviews on behalf of my customers and getting that independent feedback from the customer about what are the things you love about doing business with a supplier, what are the things you hate about doing business with a supplier. And that's all fine and good, and I still think that's important. Don't get me wrong, because we still want to build something that's fit for purpose as best as we possibly can to meet customers wherever they want to interact with us. But it means that those customers that will never change their behavior. So I'm thinking, building supply, a guy on a building site who's used to, writing something on a piece of jib, snapping a photo of it, sending it via WhatsApp to his account manager, like trying to get that guy to log into a portal, freaking forget it. Like it's probably never going to happen. Or the guy that's used to picking up his phone going, "Hey Bob, hey Jane, I need this. Can you get that? Can you get that out to me to the job site by tomorrow?" Like trying to change that behavior is it's a heavy lift, right? And so there's a certain cohort of these B2B supplier customers that it's just going to be super hard to change their behavior. And now they don't need to change their behavior. We're still going to get massive value out of our digital investments because we still have to have digital platforms to get all this stuff into and out of. And so that is really exciting for me. When you talk about 2026, it's that type of stuff that is really fun. And I'm seeing, because I'm a real big person on pattern recognition. I really like trying to identify patterns and repeat patterns in our industries. And I can remember when there was no internet. I'm old enough to remember when there was no internet. And I remember dial-up, and then I remember the adoption, main streaming of the internet. And then I remember the main lining of the internet. And so I remember the days when B2Bs were, really, really legacy in their thinking and really legacy in their tech and their systems. And a lot of the businesses I'm running into now, they have already done the hard work of upgrading the back office. Not always, but in many instances, they've done the hard work of going from the green screen ERP to a cloud ERP, for example. They've done the hard yards of maybe implementing a PIM system and maybe organizing their product data a little bit better, or getting a third-party service to help them with their product data so they can onboard suppliers faster, or whatever the case may be. But they still are really struggling with the idea that commerce can be a massively beneficial tool, not just for their customers, but for them and their teams. Because nobody wants a sales rep living in an ERP. We want them living in systems designed for commerce. That's what we want them living in. And, I've done research on the manufacturing and distribution, and this is my own personal research with my clients, has been backed up by research I've seen by Deloitte and a couple of others since then, which is that for my clients that track sales reps' time by activity, and not all do, some just track, okay, they spent 40 hours working this week, and this is how much revenue they generated, so we kind of know how productive they are broadly. But for ones that track in the CRM, okay, I spent an hour driving to this client side, I spent an hour inputting orders into the ERP, or I spent 30 minutes pulling together spec sheets to send off to this customer around this product. For the ones that track time by activity, anywhere from, on average, 20 to 60% of a sales rep's time is spent on pure admin. Nothing that puts more commission in their pocket, nothing that gives their customer a better experience. And it's that piece that we can easily automate, like 90+% of that today with digital tooling. And so when I go in, most of the time, sales teams hate me when I first get there. Like I'm the devil. I'm the guy that's going to replace them with the robots. But then give me 10 minutes with a sales team, and I will end up being their best friend. because I am a massive advocate for sales reps doing what they do best, but I'm also a massive advocate of giving them superpowers so that they don't have to do the shit they hate. And that's what I'm super excited about, is that the whole industry has started to turn a corner, it feels like, and it's definitely starting to come to us as leaders in B2B e-commerce versus us feeling like at times we were dragging them kicking and screaming towards digital transformation.
Do you talked about, it feels like you're saying we turned the corner a little bit, at least on the movement towards e-commerce. Have we turned it on the doing and the execution, the prioritization, what to do first, or is that what you're seeing most of the activity?
Yeah, it's the road mapping of how to get from A to Z or A to D in the first instance.
So I believe we should do this. You don't have to convince me of that. Now, what do we do?
Yes. And what should our prioritization be for doing this?
In what order? Yeah, that's interesting.
And then also the final exciting thing is that just in the last 2 to 3 years, like, dedicated B2B digital commerce platforms have really come into their own. They've really matured. And so one of the clients I'm working with right now, just started engaging with them, massive distributor in the United States in their vertical. They've been on the same proprietary e-commerce platform for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they came to me and they said, look, we know we can either spend a gobsmack of money upgrading to the latest version of this proprietary platform, or we can see what else is out there that might meet our needs better out of the box. Can you help us? Because we don't live in this every day. We don't even know what the platforms out there that we should be considering.
What should we be looking at?
Right? Yeah. And so we think you can help us get there. What might take us 9 months to even decide on a platform, we think we can do with you in 3 months. And leveraging your expertise and the questions to ask after doing discovery with us. Mm-hmm. And that's really exciting, is I'm seeing a level of humility on the part of manufacturers and distributors that I haven't seen before, like literally willing to be that open kimono and say, look, we know what we know our business, we know our vertical, we know the value prop we provide. In fact, this particular distributor has acquired, I think, 4 or 5 competitors in the last couple of years. So they're trying to merge these businesses into the core. They acquired companies with like 3 or 4 different ERPs. They're trying to figure out how to harmonize all these operations across all these divisions of the business now. And they're going, we don't think our current system can handle this, and we don't really know what we should be looking for in a commerce system, but you do. And so it's these kind of conversations that we're getting. I just spend less of my time evangelizing, and I made a promise to myself when I started this business, I would never try to sell the unsellable. And so if I have to get too much into, if a board or a CEO ever tells me, Jason, convince me why we should even be bothering with e-commerce. Like if I get that question, I'll say, look, clearly we're not a good fit. I don't think I can help you in a good way, a positive way that will move the needle in your business, but I can point you in the direction of somebody who might be able to. And so I've walked away from a few deals where that was the case, where they expected me to convince them why they should make investments in digital at all. And I'm kind of like, man, you're too early in your journey for where I'm at. Like I got too many businesses out there that already know the value, and they just want to know how to execute.
When you think about yourself and Greenwood Consulting, I know it's hard to answer. It feels bragging to answer, but I'm going to ask you anyways. What do you think that you do just better than most or anybody else? Like, what are the 1 or 2 things that you're like, this is just where, like, I'm in my sweet spot right here. I know you do a bunch of things, so this is disregarding the fact that you do a bunch of things and you do a bunch of things well. But where's the 1, 2, 3 things that you're like, that's my X?
That's a very interesting question. I think it's an excellent question. I'm going to answer it like this. So in the second agency that I worked for, my boss, the founder of the agency, he was very fond of saying this to me, Jason, You knoweth a man by the questions he asketh, not the answers he giveth. And so ever since then, and he said that so regularly, I like he would say it every other day, like when we were in a discovery or when we were meeting a client for the first time or whatever. And he said, just listen for the people who ask the best questions at the table. Those are the ones you need to pay attention to. Those are the ones that are going to run these businesses. They're the ones that will figure out a way through challenging times. These are the ones that you want to be working with, is the people that ask great, thoughtful, deep, meaningful, impactful questions. And so I tried to carry that into everything I did from that day forward. And I'd like to think my discovery process as a result and the questions, because my discovery is about 175 questions. And then, of course, we have sub questions that kind of lead off from there. But I'd like to think that the depth and quality of questions that I uncover and ask during discovery, that actually the businesses find that enjoyable. And I had a CEO come to me. This has been going back about 2 years ago. A major distributor in the U.S., privately owned family distributor, second generation family run distributor, and the CEO actually rang me after our first discovery workshop, and he said, "This is like the best." He said, "I'm learning things about my company I didn't even know." He's like,
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
he's like, we have processes here. And I remember when we were sitting around the boardroom table, because it was a remote call, and they had like 10 subject matter experts in their business and like divisional experts in their business. And I remember at one point I asked one question as a follow-up to the questionnaire. And when the subject matter expert answered, the CEO goes, "No, we don't. Do we really do it that way?" He goes, when did that change? When did we start doing it that way? Because I thought we did it this way. And they said, "Oh, well, we had to do it. We had to change the process because of these reasons or whatever." And the boss was like, "Okay, let's talk about this afterwards," because I didn't even know we had changed our process around this thing, right? And so I get a lot of joy and fulfillment out of shining lights on areas of these businesses that probably haven't had a light shone on them in sometimes decades. And the businesses, the business is successful. They're successful, but in some cases they're successful despite themselves, not because of any intentional act on their part. And so that is the thing that I think for me, I would like to think or hope that stands out when people engage with me. They're like, "Wow, he has some really awesome questions that we haven't really thought about that before, and we need to go away. We need to dig into this a little bit more, and we need to examine that a little bit more before we come back with an answer, because he asked a thoughtful question. We should give a thoughtful response." And that's what I hope is my biggest differentiator.
It's a funny thing, because I think I would, as a speaker, as a podcaster, you're a talker, right? And I would, if I was making a bet about something, it wouldn't be that you would say curiosity, listening is the greatest strength. However, in the UK, I saw it first in the UK, and then in Australia especially, and then of course the US. But what made you a good MC was not having filler between the sessions. What made you a great MC, and probably the thing I appreciated most about your MCing, is you listened to the sessions and what was being said, even though you knew most of what was being said. You still listened to what was being said and how it was being said, and you use that as your transition between different sessions. And so you were not only prepared, but you use that. And so I would echo that. I think that's one of your great strengths, and I would say it's a surprising strength, because as a talker, you're not, most people think you talk instead of listen. So I think that's a very cool thing. Well, we're just about out of time. I think we've got to do some other sessions. I'd like to, in the future, talk about. I want to hear about what you think about AI. You mentioned it halfway. We just didn't dig into it. I want to hear about what you're thinking about AI. I'd love to hear your perspective on, differences between how manufacturers are approaching this versus distributors. I think there's some significant differences there that I would love to talk about. So let's do this again soon.
I can't wait, my friend. It's been an absolute joy and a pleasure to chat with you. You always lead down, even in person, when we're in person, you lead me down interesting conversational rabbit holes that I don't expect or don't think we're going to go down, and I like that. I like that surprise and delight element of the way that you speak to people. And I've witnessed it even when I've been standing next to you and you're talking to people in my vicinity, and I'm not rudely overhearing, but I'm kind of, I'm just there and I'm observing how you interact with people, and you have a very super cool way of getting people sucked into the conversation with you by asking really unique questions of them that I don't think they probably hear very often. And and it is like a genuine, and you're not doing that as a hack. You're doing that as like, I'm genuinely curious about this person and what makes them tick. And I think that's a gift, and I really appreciate that in you. And I thank you.
I'm trying to work on that in my dating life. So maybe,
I'll be a reference. I'll be a reference for you.
Hey, ladies, Jason Greenwood's a reference for me, for all the ladies listening to my B2B e-commerce podcast. No, I appreciate it, dude. The last couple of years getting to know you has been amazing, and look forward to doing our next one. I appreciate it so much. Thanks for being on.
My pleasure. Chat to you soon.
Manufacturers, distributors, leaders in the zone. If you're building B2B, this the podcast throne. The industry's heartbeat, we're setting the tone. Turn insights to actions, it's how empires are grown. We're talking change management, breaking resistance. Strategies so sharp, they redefine persistence. Customer adoption, it's more than retention. It's building a movement, commanding attention. It's the B2B e-commerce show, where the vision is clear and the strategies glow. From the top of the globe, we're the pros who know. Turn the volume up loud, it's time to grow. We bring news, big topics, insights to spark. From the boardroom's glow to the warehouse dark. Digital transformations, the path we're paving. Helping you lead through the change you're facing. This is more than a podcast, it's the industry's voice. Giving you the tools to make the right choice. No fluff, just facts, no hype, just action. The show where solutions are more than a fraction. It's the B2B e-commerce show, where the vision is clear and the strategies glow. From the top of the globe, we're the pros who know. Turn the volume up loud, it's time to grow. This is your guide to the digital race. Practical advice, no time to waste. So tune in, gear up, and let's own the space. It's the B2B e-commerce show, the industry's best.